Today we're going to be playing some Dark Souls 3. The reason this title screen looks kind of weird is because of a graphics filter that I have set up, which makes there be more stark contrast between things. We're going to have to skip the opening cinematic, unfortunately, because some settings that I have make everything just stutter really bad during the cinematics.
It is called Lothric.
It's not a good thing to see. But I can put a link to the opening cinematic in the description. Let's see. Let's make our character here Kenny Rogers. We have a bunch of starting classes to choose from, and this decision actually isn't particularly important. It sort of dictates some of your starting attributes and gear, but as you go throughout the game you find so much more gear and you level up your attributes and get to change them so much that it really doesn't matter too much what you pick at the start. I think I'll try a Pyromancer. I haven't done a Pyromancy build yet. There's basically three types of magic in the game. There's Faith magic, which is clerical spells. There's Sorcery magic, and then there's Pyromancy. So, let's do it. Pyromancy, as the name suggests, has to deal with lots of fire. So these orange bars on the ground are messages, and the ones in the starting area, are from the creators of the game, basically telling you the controls, more or less. But throughout the game, you can actually leave messages that other players can see. And similarly, other players can leave messages that will show up in your game. Dark Souls 3, out of the three Dark Souls games, is probably the one that, well, definitely the one I would say that plays the best on the computer. Dark Souls 1 is probably still my favorite, but it wasn't a super optimized game. Even on the consoles, it had some frame rate issues at times, and the port to PC was less than perfect. It wasn't actually engineered as a PC game, whereas I think Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, they engineered them for both consoles and PCs rather than trying to port them from a console to a PC. Oh, there's a guy. Alright. This is the first boss of the game, and players who are new to Dark Souls hate this thing. So he's big and he hits pretty hard and he moves fairly quickly. So unless you're really good at dodge timing, he can fuck you up. Especially after he transforms like that. But he's not too bad if you know what you're doing. Alright. One thing of note, when you use spells in this game, you have a mana bar, and spells cost a certain amount of mana, which is a change from the earlier Dark Souls games where it was basically you had, it still works this way, I believe, you have a certain number of slots that you can fill up with spells. But in previous games, like, you would have a certain numbers of castings for each spell as well. So Fireball, you would have like 8 or 16 times you could use it before you had to rest. I gotta say, the Pyromancer starting kit is pretty good. This axe definitely kicks ass. And having that fireball available at the start instead of having to find the pyromancy stuff a little bit later definitely helps.
Welcome to the bonfire, unkindled one. I am a firekeeper. I tend to the flame, and tend to thee. The lords have left their thrones, and must be delivered to them. To this end. Very well. Then touch the darkness within me. Take nourishment from these sovereignless souls.
So this is the Firekeeper, and she is where we spend our souls that we get either from items or killing enemies in order to level up.
Farewell, Ashen One. May the flames guide thee.
And take that sword that we found in the first boss and use it to ignite the bonfire here. And this place is sort of our central hub and like safe zone. And we can use this, we can also travel between the bonfires. So we can head to our first actual zone. In these loading screens, it's pretty much tradition in the Souls games. There will be some item description. And you can also find those descriptions on various items themselves if you encounter them in the game. They just sort of tell you what they do. This game art is gorgeous. Here we are at the High Wall of Lothric. We'll find these bonfires periodically and we'll light them. What they are, they act as sort of checkpoints. You can also rest at them to recover all your health and mana, but when you do, any enemies that you've killed will respawn back to life. And if you die, you spawn back at the last bonfire that you rested at. So, I don't intend to do this playthrough with a shield really, so I'll be two-handing my weapon most of the time. And that just lets you get a bit of extra damage out of it. And there's different types of attacks that you can pull. Like we have our light attacks are just these. We have our heavy attacks. We can do kicks to break an enemy's guard. We can do jumping attacks. And depending on the weapon that you're using, it also has like a special weapon art that uses a bit of mana to pull off. Let's see what the axes is. Okay, that one, I believe that gives us extra poise, which decreases the likelihood that we get stunned by enemy attacks for a brief time. Either that or it gives you more damage for a brief period of time. I'm not sure which. We can also lock on to the enemy like this using the auto-targeting system. That can be very helpful. So I mentioned souls earlier. There's two main ways to get souls. Whenever we kill something, it drops a certain amount, and we can see that number in the bottom right of the screen. Right now it's 3474. But the problem is, if I die, those souls they drop on the ground where I died, and after my respawn, if I fail to retrieve them before dying again, then they're just completely lost. I can never get them back. The other way we get souls is we'll find these items that are called Soul of a Blank, like Soul of a Deserted Corpse, or Soul of a Soldier, or Soul of a Proud Knight, things like that, and they act as sort of like a currency that we can save in our inventory, and then consume the souls to increase our souls in the bottom right there. So we can sort of save up and use those whenever we actually want to spend them so we don't risk losing them. And I believe mechanically that's all that souls are for. In Dark Souls 1, they had some magic that, Jesus Christ, these are annoying. There was some magic that, it might have been in Dark Souls 2 as well, where the number of souls that you had on you would affect how the magic functions, typically increasing the damage. We could just cheese it and just spam fireballs too. That's usually a pretty effective way to handle things. And Dark Souls is kind of notorious for being difficult. Because even just the standard run-of-the-mill enemies can and will kill you pretty easily if you're not careful. That one hit did about half my health, and now I'm out of healing items too, so I'm in a pretty dangerous spot. Forgot how nasty these guys can be. In fact, I'm just going to run to the next bonfire so I can recover my healing items. I can't light it because that guy's too close. Enemies will usually stop chasing you after a little while. They won't follow you to the ends of the earth or anything. So we rest at this bonfire now, we recover our health, we recover our health recovery item, which is the Estus Flask. We have 3 uses of it. But all the enemies that we've killed so far have respawned, which really shouldn't be an issue. Cheese this guy a little bit. Oh shit, where'd he come from? And in these games, you want to be wise about your health recovery, because it does take a little bit of time to consume the Estus Flask. So if you're doing it in the middle of a fight, the enemy might be able to land some shots on you. I'm not doing a great job right now of dodging hits and playing defensively. Yeah, Dark Souls is really all about carefully timing things. And these little ghosts that we're going to see throughout, this one's in red, some of them will be in white. That's just a mirror, basically, of what's going on in another player's game at around the same time. So right here there's a bloodstain, we can activate it to see how this person died horribly. But sometimes we'll just see some. You see, he was trying to drink the Estus flask there, and then he got killed. But sometimes we'll just see a white phantom, and that's normal. That's just somebody else is playing the game in roughly the same area, and the game will show you that. It's just kind of a neat little thing that they do. Pretty fortunate in that most of the enemies that we're fighting can be stun locked, which means if I can get the hit off before they do, I can just chain a bunch of attacks together and hopefully just kill them like that. But some enemies you can't stun lock, so there we go, we got another weapon. In those cases you got to be really mindful, because you run in and try to do a bunch of attacks and suddenly they hit you back for a ton of damage. We can designate a certain number of our Estus Flask uses towards the Ashen Estus Flask, which will recover mana instead of health. So I think I have like 3 for health, 1 for mana on Estus Flasks. We could do 2 and 2, 1 and 3, or all in one and none in the other. It's just a matter of player preference. I think keeping 1 in Ashen is probably okay. It might be a little bit much though, because I'm not using the Fireball all the time. Let's see, where do we need to go now? And famously in Dark Souls, enemies will pop out of places and ambush you. So it helps that I know of a lot of the ambushes, but I certainly won't remember all of them. I'll definitely get caught off guard a few times. And up ahead here, we can see player messages, try fire, rolling required ahead. There's an enemy that we really don't want to mess with. For some reason on one of these sort of desiccated figures, they start to transform with that corruption like the first boss. And they are very, very nasty, very fast, and hit very hard. So we're going to not fight that for now. We could probably take it with the fireballs, honestly, but it's not worth dying. Woo! Almost fell off the cliff there. So now we're out of healing items again, which is a little bit problematic. And of course, Tri-Finger Butthole. The classic Dark Souls 3 message. I think for now I'm just going to try to open up a shortcut. Because we really just don't have the health recovery, and I haven't been playing good enough to really continue exploring. So I'm just going to try to rush through and get a shortcut. Oh, come on. That's one thing I do miss about Dark Souls 2. The one thing that they did right, in my opinion, is that they had the Estus Flask mechanic, which is, you know, the thing that recovers as you rest at bonfires. But they also had lots of small consumable healing items. And once you use them, they're gone. But the way that they would work was, like, they would gradually, over time, allow you to recover health. Those were incredibly useful. Alright, here's a shortcut. Dark Souls games are notorious for having shortcuts that lead back to previous areas. So that door that we just opened, all we gotta do is just run up here, ignore all these enemies, hopefully, and not die. And this is the very first bonfire at the High Wall of Lothric that we encountered. Now we can rest again and go take that shortcut. I don't know if it's actually prudent to run past everything. I feel like we might want to try to fight some of these guys, but I'm just going to do it. Hope for the best. Okay, he might fall down onto me. I think it has happened to me before where that guy has gotten on the elevator with me, and that was just a very bad time. Our fireball spell does have a bit of a small area of effect. Sometimes you can get 2 or 3 enemies with it, but these guys weren't clustering up too much. Yeah, that's an annoying thing that will happen sometimes, trying to hit an enemy. If your weapon swing art like hits a wall, it'll just bounce off of the wall. Because all the weapons basically have static weapon arts for the various types of attack. You're not really actually controlling the angle from which your character hits. You just have a set of predefined angles based upon which weapon art you use. One-handed, two-handed, light attack, strong attack, that sort of thing. Yeah, this guy's got a tower shield, so he's got pretty good defense. But if you get behind most enemies and you do an attack, it automatically triggers a this must be an NPC. It automatically triggers a backstab. Yeah, let's summon the NPC to help clear out some of these guys. I have done solo playthroughs before, and it's definitely more challenging. Once you have other players or NPCs summoned into your world, they just help so much with handling the monsters, because you get to gang up on them. I don't think I've ever actually noticed this NPC before. It's either new with the DLC, or I just never actually paid attention. Alright, Albert, you got a badass axe. Get up there. God. Nice. We got the Lothric Knight's sword. That actually... I can't remember. I think that actually might be a pretty good sword. It's probably better than my axe, but... really, in this game, just about any weapon can be viable. You know, you're just trading off, you know, damage for better move sets, or faster attack speed, or all kinds of different things. Let's go ahead and do our backstab. Yeah, while enemies are recovering from backstabs, they're invulnerable for a little bit. This blue knight is definitely tougher than the red knights. But yeah, just having 2 people to fight, it really helps, because there's also no friendly fire here. You know, I can hit this phantom all day and nothing happens. If the game had friendly fire, it would be totally different. Go and talk to the crone.
Ah, the wait has been long, unkindled one. I am Emma, High Priestess of Lothric Castle. Allow me to speak frankly. You will not find the Lords of Cinder here. They have left, gone, to their churning homes, converging at the base of this castle. Head to the bottom of the high wall, forge on through the great gate, and raise this banner to proceed.
All right. Huh. There we go. Yeah, we can use this NPC to clear out the remaining knights. I may go and level up actually, just so I can use that Lothric Knight sword. Although I kind of want to, I don't think I've actually done a heavy weapons build in this game. I've mostly just used longswords and faster weapons. I kind of want to try that axe that guy has actually. I should look it up and see where that drops off of. Because that would be kind of fun to try out. We got a Lucerne, that's a hammer polearm. Yep. Some asshole over here, remember him. Yeah, and these guys, we can break their guard. And when we break their guard, we can land a critical hit, which is kind of like a backstab. So that green bar at the top, that's your stamina. And when you block attacks, it consumes stamina just as if you were attacking, kind of. And if that stamina goes to 0 while you're blocking, then your guard gets broken, and you're temporarily vulnerable to a critical hit like that. So I'm actually going to do a quick Google here and see if I can find out where that Great Axe is located. Because I've always wanted to do a Great Axe build in any of the Dark Souls, but I never actually did. It's kind of funny because a lot of the larger weapons, they have decent range, but the Great Axe not so much. Let's see. Okay. So it's actually lootable off of one of the enemies that uses it up here in the high wall. I think it's the guy that was right by the elevator earlier. The problem with that is I'll probably have to actually farm it for a while, which I don't really want to show on stream because that's pretty damn boring. Because enemies will drop the weapons that they wield sometimes, but it's usually a pretty low drop chance, so you have to kind of spawn them over and over again to do it. That's the Great Axe. Ah, shit. That was close. Yeah, getting stuck like that is like a death sentence for the most part. I'm out of health recovery now too, so... And I'm almost dead. Not a good combination. Oh shit. Dogs are always a pain in the ass. Like even when you're pretty skilled at the game, dogs will still kill you all the time just because they move so squirrely. That was close. The reason that I'm trying to avoid dying, it's really not a huge deal in the Souls games, you get used to it. But I like to avoid it because right now I'm embered. In the top left there, in that little circular thing, you can see there's all that orange stuff. And also on my character, you can see the orange glowing around them. That basically what that means is my max health is extended by a fair amount. And also, I can summon other phantoms into the world, like how I summoned that NPC, who I'm now going to dismiss, actually. That's why I can't rest at the bonfire. You can't rest when you have phantoms around. But when you die, you lose that embering. And the only way to get it back is to either use a consumable item, which is an ember, right there's one, or to defeat a boss. And embers are in pretty short supply in the early stages of the game. So... it's, you know, it's not a big deal, but I'd prefer to save it if I can. So I'll be playing a bit more cautiously here. I'll kill that guy once and see if he drops it. The odds aren't great, but if he does, I can start putting points into my strength to use that weapon. Okay, nice, we can just ignore him. Can't hit me, dude. I'm up here. Yeah, that might have looked like I should have gotten hit there, but mechanically the way the game works is when you do that dodge roll, you have like a split second of invulnerability. So even though that guy ostensibly drove his axe right into my character model, I was executing a roll. Let's see, maybe we can just summon Albert and go ahead and kill the actual first boss of the game, I suppose. Huh, I'm not seeing the summon sign now. There's no way that wasn't an NPC. That had to be an NPC for sure. Think? Huh, what if that was a player? That's weird. They didn't act like a player though because they were following me around. That was definitely an NPC. Let's see, do I have any consumables that I can use to buff myself? No, I don't. I mean, I'm fairly confident that I can just solo the first boss. He's not difficult by any means. Okay. It's odd that I'm not seeing any summon signs. Let's see, do I have a password set? Yes, I do. Dick tits. Alright. One of the features that they introduced in Dark Souls 3 was you could specify a password on your network settings for the game, and what that would allow you to do is only summon people who were and be summoned by people who are using that same password. So it's basically a really good way to guarantee that you can play with your friends. Yeah, let's summon Big Swole. That's a hilarious name. This guy's Big Swole. Because one of the nightmares about Dark Souls 1 was actually trying to play with your friends. If you dropped a summon sign down somewhere, some random person might summon you before your friend could. I guess I should explain summoning. It's where you can place a sign down like that, and then somebody else can pull you to their world as a phantom like this. And you basically try to assist them. Let's see, is this guy AFK? But in Dark Souls 1, if you put your summon sign down in a common location, you might get summoned by a random player instead of one of your friends that you were trying to get summoned by. Okay, he's here. That was a big hassle. Dark Souls 2 partially resolved it by having there be a ring that you could equip and set to one of 8 different configurations, and you can only summon people with the similar configuration on the ring. But the password system is really the most effective way, although I'll admit the ring system was pretty damn neat. It was cooler than the passwords, because it was actually like a part of the game. Alright, Big Swole, give me a hand. The strategy for this boss is to just kind of stay underneath him, because all of his attacks go forward like that. Big Swole get some of those attacks in. During the second phase, he gets a little bit meaner. Woo! But yeah, having another player just makes fights so much easier. It is absurd. Although the game kind of balances it by giving bosses and whatnot more health when other players are summoned. So, like, all the bosses are pretty much soloable. They're not that bad. Like, that guy would have died in about half the amount of hits probably if I hadn't summoned this guy. But get a new bonfire. Alright, and I think that's probably a good leaving off point here. I suppose I'll try to farm up that Great Axe here for a bit. Maybe next time I play I can have it. That could be a fun way to do a playthrough. Pyromancy with a Great Axe. Sounds like a complete piece of shit build, so. Alright, I'll leave it there.